Hello and welcome to UELtras on Ranks FC, the show that talks you through Europe's most exciting club competition, the Europa League, and its new baby brother, the Europa Conference League. I'm going to have to stop saying new baby brother quite soon. I imagine we're nearly through our first full Conference League season. I'm Jack Collins, and by the end of tonight, we will know the lineups of the finals in both competitions. It's been an incredible season in both, a wonderful debut campaign for the Europa Conference League and another brilliant season in the Europa League. And that's where we're going to start in the Europa League with a quick recap on the results. RB Leipzig left it late to beat Rangers 1-0, whilst Eintracht Frankfurt came to London and beat West Ham 2-1 in their own backyard. We'll start with that one with the reverse fixture taking place in the Waldstadion tonight. The first leg was quite a remarkable affair. The London Stadium absolutely electric before kickoff, and that rendition of I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles, absolutely mesmeric. The place was bouncing, and then after 51 seconds, Rafael Santos Borre dug out a ridiculous cross, and Ansgar now silenced the home crowd with a header after sneaking in at the back post. It took a few minutes for West Ham to recover, but to their credit, they didn't let that early blow sideline them. They grew into the game. They forced a few excellent saves from Kevin Trapp. Jared Bowen hit the post when he should have scored. And then finally, they hit back with a set-piece routine that Michail Antonio forced home. The game ebbed and flowed for the rest of the first half, but level at halftime felt like a relatively fair reflection to me. Eintracht came out like a train again after the break, though, and when they should have scored straight away almost. And when they did retake the lead, it was through the most beautifully worked move of the game. Daichi Kamada conducting a slick one-pass move, which he eventually forced home himself after a save from Areola. West Ham came back again, though, and they were denied what would have been, one of the equalizers of not just this season, but I think this competition's history, when Jared Bowen's thunderbolt bicycle kick came back off the underside of the bar. But Eintracht had enough in the tank to see the victory out, and it resulted in some emotional celebrations, especially from Martin Hinteregger, who'd been in tears the last time Eintracht played in a semi-final in London when they crashed out to Chelsea in 2019. You go on to tonight, and I suppose what you can pick out as the key battle from the last game as well was Daichi Kamada. And I was going to say against Thomas Souček. Kamada was the best player on the park last week. And I think that's an important thing to look at. The way he plays in this Eintracht side and for Oliver Glasner is that he plays between the lines. He came sort of off the main striker in Santos Borre, which means that neither the midfield or the defense were able to hugely pick him up, and he had the time and space to get his foot on the ball and control proceedings. Now, West Ham need to shut down those passing avenues, or he's going to do the exact same again. There is this potential of a change of shape to match the Eintracht three at the back, but with a lack of fit defenders and the fact that West Ham kind of have to go for this a little bit, I do think that David Moyes will stick with his formation. And he might ask Thomas Souček to kind of change his role to attempt to shackle Kamada and see this game out. Now, Declan Rice, obviously we saw in that second leg in Lyon, being asked to push on, to make a difference in the final third, to be able to control proceedings up there. I think Souček will play the more defensive role of the two in this game. And that means, I think, dropping in almost as an auxiliary centre-back at times in the way that Kamada kind of links up the play in there. And that and how that kind of pans out, I think, is going to be absolutely crucial to the way that this game ends. We look at the game as a whole, and West Ham do need to come out and attack at some point. Let's not say right from the very beginning. They're one goal behind in the tie, one goal forces extra time. Just wonder if that might suit Frankfurt, who like to play a little bit more in transition. It's no surprise that we've seen their away form outshine their home form in this competition so far. I think the West Ham will have a little bit more of the ball than many expect, as Eintracht tried to sucker them in a little bit. The extra players wide for Frankfurt are so important in these transitions, right? Kostic and Ansgar. Now, keep an eye on how far up the pitch they are stationed, because that will show you exactly who's on top of this game. If Kostic can now, for getting into the final third and creating opportunity after opportunity, then it's a good bet that Frankfurt have West Ham exactly where they want them. But if they're pinned back and dealing with forward runs from West Ham's fullbacks, dealing with those wingers straying wide, then I think that probably West Ham have Frankfurt in their sights. It is a potential cagey first half, I think. That's the ultimate thing here, because both teams will kind of try to consolidate their positions before getting into the groove in the second. We saw in the Champions League this week, that game between Real Madrid and Manchester City, which obviously exploded into life late on. That first half was a little bit sort of feeling each other out, trying to work out where the probes could be felt to try and get in behind, but nothing too kind of clear cut. I can imagine something quite similar here. Frankfurt know that they have the lead and they're quite happy to defend that. West Ham know that one goal will take this to extra time and keep them right back in it. So no one wants to, throw that away too early. I think this is going to be a cagey first half, but it might well explode into life in the second. I'm going to go for a prediction of Frankfurt 1, West Ham 1, which would mean that Frankfurt progress. But to be honest, we know not to write either of these teams off. It could go either way. It could go anyway. These are all so on a knife edge. It's incredibly hard to call. But I think that Frankfurt will enjoy this game at the very least. And I think that it might just suit them and they might just edge it. We'll go over to the other then, and RB Leipzig against Rangers at Ibrox. There was a lot of anticipation around this first leg. Leipzig are still probably most people's favourites to win the tournament. And after they failed to beat Atalanta in the home leg of their quarter-final, I think it was quite clear to see that the crowd wanted to see some more of that incisive, explosive football that has become prevalent under Domenico Tedesco after the Christmas break. But it didn't really come. Whilst Rangers offered very little going forward, they knew exactly what they were coming for, and they very nearly got it. If a genuine worldie of a goal from Angelino hadn't broken the deadlock, I really don't know if anything would have. You saw Leipzig starting to get a little bit desperate towards the end of this game. We saw an Emil Forsberg attempted bicycle kick in sort of the 75th, 78th minute, which felt like the wrong thing to do at the time. Now, I'm all for vibes and bicycle kick attempts. And look, you go to the other game in the Europa League and you see Jared Bowen almost score one of the goals of the tournament, but Forsberg was the exact opposite, completely missed the ball. Just didn't feel like the right moment for it. But anyway, the goal did come, and Angelino's late strike, an arrow straight, clean as a whistle volley from a cleared corner that pierced bodies in the box like a hot knife through butter. One for the purist. If it's not goal of the tournament, they will at least be in the conversation. But it did potentially mask a slightly toothless performance from the hosts that leaves the tie relatively evenly balanced ahead of today's game at Ibrox. And I think given his strike rate this season, it's not often of late that you can accuse Christopher Nkunku of being guilty of profligacy. But it was the case here once, twice, three times. Leipzig's best opportunities fell to the man that they would have wanted them to fall to. But on every occasion, he failed to make them count. The game probably reached its nadir for Nkunku as he rounded Alan McGregor with, only to fire inexplicably over the crossbar with a net at his mercy. Off balance, sure. But in the form that he's in at the moment, really a gimme. Sometimes it's just not your night. It did feel a little bit like that for Nkunku in his home leg. Rangers had defended stoically, though. And if they only really threatened through Ryan Kent's considerable skill in transition, can you blame them? Given the record that Rangers have had at Ibrox in this competition and the fact that they are underdogs in this tie, it was a measured, sensible way to approach this fixture. And they're very much still in it at 1-0 down. We go to the key battle, and I haven't picked a player matchup here, but actually a time period. And I think it's the first 20 minutes. The first quarter of this game is in many ways absolutely crucial because Rangers have come out like a hurricane in almost every single round of this knockout tie. In the knockout ties of the Europa League, I mean, they leveled the tie after 2 minutes against Braga in that second leg. They then nearly scored again after 7, only for it to be ruled out for offside. They scored against 11 and 15 minutes against Red Star. When they were starting to take away that game and in the first leg, pushing onwards to try and give themselves the advantage. And they scored in the second leg after 22 minutes against Dortmund as well. The crowd are so up for this, and Ibrox will be bouncing. Leipzig have to weather the storm and try and quieten them. And you can either do that by just defending well and kind of killing the momentum of the game, or by a sucker punch counter-attack. If you let Rangers get on top, if Rangers score early, this atmosphere can become suffocating, and teams have really, really struggled to get out when Rangers have felt like they are inevitable in so many ways. We've said this about certain stadiums before. We said it about Anfield when we were talking about that game against Barcelona, where Liverpool came from 3-0 down, obviously, to qualify and win 4-3 on aggregate. It just felt, and Barcelona players said afterwards, it felt inevitable. I think Ibrox can get like that, and especially on these nights, if an early goal goes in, it can be the end of you. So how does it play out? And look, as we said, Rangers will come roaring out of those traps. And it's going to be fueled by emotion there, especially given there's been a really tough week at Ibrox, the tragic death of Rangers' long-term kitman, Jimmy Bell. We've seen the place absolutely electric on European nights, but I think that adds a real poignance to it, and I think the atmosphere is going to be incredibly special. That said, as I said last week, I think Leipzig are better equipped to deal with this kind of thing than most teams. It's easy to forget that they are a widely despised club in Germany, and they are treated with hostility almost everywhere they go as the biggest kind of conceivable threat to the fan-empowered 50+1 rule in their home nation. They're also more defensively sound than many of Rangers' previous opponents. Dortmund's defensive frailties are well documented. Both Braga and Crvena Zvezda lack the defensive leaders that Tedesco has at his disposal, especially with Willy Orban returning in the middle of that back three. I think Leipzig will weather the storm, and I think they'll hurt Rangers on the counter. It's no surprise that I think some of their, and by extension, Christopher Nkunku's best performances have come on the road. I can see Rangers scoring, but I think Leipzig's away form, their away record, and their superior quality will mean they have just about enough to see this through, even in the cauldron that is going to be Ibrox tonight. So I'm going to predict Rangers 1, Leipzig 2. And that means I'm predicting an all-German final in the Europa League. Let's go to the Conference League then, and another two brilliant games right on a knife edge. Phenomenal viewing last week, and the Conference League hosted what was for me the standout game of the night, a 5-goal thriller in Rotterdam. And that's where we're going to start. The second leg will take place in Marseille, and Les Olympiques find themselves 3-2 down to Feyenoord at the halfway stage. We said last week on here that we're expecting this one in the cauldron of the Kuip to be full of excitement and goals, given both teams' propensity to give up chances. But this was a special encounter with the tie swinging kind of madly in terms of who was on top across the entire 90 minutes. Feyenoord, buoyed by a fervent home support and an atmosphere both red hot and smoked out, came out of the blocks like a sprinter, and those nicknamed Olympians couldn't keep up. Cyril Dessers, who I have officially christened as the first Europa Conference League specialist, gave Feyenoord the lead as after being slid through by Luis Sinisterra, and 2 minutes later, the Colombian went from provider to punisher as he doubled the lead. The double salvo from the home side was testament to their early game dominance, I thought, and Marseille looked in danger of being swatted aside in the fires of Feyenoord in the early stages, but they did then manage to land a counterpunch with one of their first genuine forays into the opposition half. Bamba Dieng, back from injury, picked up the ball and rifled home a lovely strike from outside the area. Suddenly, Rotterdam was silent and the game swung wildly back the other way. 10 minutes later, Gerson, the man who scored the first goal in Marseille's victory over PAOK in the quarterfinals, picked up the ball in midfield, spread it wide and continued his run as the ball was fired into the box, picking up on a spilled shot from the goalkeeper to fire home, all without kind of breaking stride. And suddenly we were level. And then just as sort of it looked like Marseille had got themselves the upper hand in the tie, they decided to shoot themselves in the foot again, straight from kickoff in the second half. Sarr's back pass came up short, and it was Cyril Dessers who popped up again to grab back the advantage for Feyenoord and set the place off again. The scenes in the crowd, in the stands, after that goal goes in, just after halftime, absolutely outrageous. From there, at 3-2 up, the game went mad. If it wasn't already, right? Basketball-esque, end-to-end chaos, last-ditch tackles, brilliant saves. It had it all. It culminated in Alireza Jahanbakhsh being put clean through only to fluff his lines and the opportunity to give Feyenoord that 2-goal cushion. So it ended 3-2, breathless, and with both sides ruining missed opportunities. And now we get to do it all over again. So for a key battle, I've picked out Duya Sarr against Cyril Dessers. Dessers is the reason that Feyenoord have the advantage in this tie. I've taken to calling him Cyril the Conference Cannon. So that's a nice nickname I imagine he's going to catch on back in his homeland. He was helped in his endeavours last week by a particularly poor performance from Marseille centre-back Duya Sarr, encapsulated by that back pass that we spoke about a little while ago. Look, he's a good player, Sarr, and he won't take too much disheartening from one poor performance, although he wasn't great as Marseille got battered 4-0 by Lyon at the weekend either. But he came up against his Rotterdam-based nemesis, and he's coming up against him again. I think it's quite interesting to see how the mental capacity and mental battle plays out here as well. Dessers knows that last week he had Sarr's number. I wonder if that plays into this again. But look, the Marseille defender is going to have to radically improve on what he put out last week if he's going to outwit the competition's top scorer in their personal duel. If he does, and he's capable of doing so, Sarr, and Marseille can keep Dessers quiet, they'll go a long way to making sure that they can book their place in the final, even from a losing position at kickoff. So how does it play out? Well, chaos, fire, blood, thunder. This had everything. And I have no doubt whatsoever that the second leg is going to be exactly the same. If the kite was a cauldron, I think the Velodrome is going to be a thunderstorm. Sampaoli's sides are quite emotional by nature, and I think that the occasion will probably help them to channel that. Both teams high-powered offensively. Both defenses have shown to have faults. So I'm going to be a coward and say that this is going to go to extra time because I just can't call it. I think Sinistera and Nelson are going to cause huge problems in transition. I think that Dessers is going to be a handful, as he has been for this entire competition. And Orkan Kukcu has the ability to release those kind of counters at any given point. It's a wonderful player, and I love watching him play from that slightly deeper playmaking role. But on the other hand, I think Dimitri Payet is going to get his foot on the ball far more with the first leg and control this in the final third. They have Arkadiusz Milik returning to full fitness. Marseille's threat is major. Jerson has a habit of popping up with that wand of a left peg at the right times. Bombadien cannot be as wasteful as he was at times in the first leg. And having the likes of Amine Harit, Cengiz Under, Cedric Bakambu as attacking options, I think that Marseille potentially outscore Feyenoord here. So I'm going to go Marseille 3, Feyenoord 2, a reverse fixture in the reverse fixture. And this one goes to extra time. And you'd be a madman to try and call it. Marseille perhaps edge it, perhaps. But, I thought they'd edge the first leg and Feyenoord shut me right up there. So I'm going to leave that one down to the fates and move on finally to Roma against Leicester, which finished 1-1 in the first leg at the King Power. Leicester probably had the best of this game, and they'll be a little bit disappointed, I think, not to have a lead to defend in Rome. Ultimately, this was a battle of attrition between two teams who are well-matched, well-coached, and two coaches that have done nothing but sing the other's praise in the build-up. My favourite moment of this entire game was Mourinho going screaming at the sideline, turning around in a rage, and giving Brendan Rodgers a hug. Obviously, the two worked together at Chelsea, and they've been, more than complimentary about how each other have worked. Mourinho about Rodgers' ability as a coach, Rodgers about Mourinho helping him to develop and start things off when he was getting into management. So it is two genuine friends here, I think, which is nice. That Roma drew first blood in Leicester with young wing-back Nikola Zalewski, who's grown into this season spectacularly in the absence of the injured Leonardo Spinazzola. Zalewski weaved off his wing, slid in skipper Lorenzo Pellegrini to fire home through the legs of Kasper Schmeichel. But Leicester bounced back quite nicely, I thought. Whilst there was a lot of huff and puff in the first half without creating anything particularly clear-cut, the introduction of Harvey Barnes by Rodgers was a masterstroke. He created the equaliser in the second half, whipping in across from the byline that was bundled home by a combination of Ademola Lookman and a scrambling Gianluca Mancini, which levelled things up. It was no less, to be honest, than Leicester deserved, and they pushed onwards looking for a winner. It was a mixture of wayward finishing, staunch defending, and a good goalkeeping display from a former rival from across the Midlands, ex-Wolves goalkeeper Rui Patricio, that kept the Foxes at bay. I think the key battle here is Lorenzo Pellegrini against Yuri Tielemans. With no fit and registered number 6s, Brendan Rodgers has asked Tielemans to fill the role at the base of midfield in recent weeks in the Conference League. And his battle in the middle with Pellegrini is going to be crucial. Perhaps what makes it interesting is the role that Roma captain Lorenzo Pellegrini was asked to play in the last game. He's often used as part of Mourinho's forward three, kind of playing off Tammy Abraham, but he was pushed back into the midfield pivot in the first leg, potentially to take advantage of Leicester's that lack of defensive nous in midfield. And the fact that he scored, bombing forward from that role, suggests that Mourinho's plan worked in that extent. That the fact that this is Tielemans, it is Maddison and Dewsbury Hall, it's not the most defensively cohesive midfield trio you're ever going to see. And Pellegrini was able to get through that bomb on and get on the end of that Zalewski through ball to give Roma the lead. But it does mean that with Pellegrini in there, and look, he's a wonderful hard worker, he's a brilliant footballer, and he's not defensively suspect, but the pivot is not as defensively sound as it was with Sergio Oliveira and Brian Cristante in there as a pair, I would say. So if Tielemans can get on the ball and pick his passes, perhaps Leicester's offensively minded trio can take advantage of that at the Olympico, especially playing more on the counter. And I think that's how it plays out. Roma are going to be far more on the front foot, given that they're going to be at home playing in front of what is going to be a cacophonous atmosphere at a sold-out Olympico. I wouldn't be surprised to see Pellegrini deep again. And in order to free up a berth for Nicolo Zaniolo, obviously he scored a hat-trick in the second leg of the quarterfinal against Glimt, and I think he's going to have a huge say here as well. Leicester will naturally play more cautiously than they did at home, but it might just suit them, I think. They've come from behind away at PSV, so they know that they have the ability to make things happen in that sense. With Vardy back alongside the likes of Lookman, Barnes and Daka, they have the opportunity to try and get behind Roma's back line. If it does get a little bit tighter and a little bit more technical in there. You look at someone like Kelechi Iheanacho, the kind of player who can pick a lock in the middle, but he can also be there to finish things off. So it's going to be interesting to see how Rodgers lines up here. There is also a possibility he reverts to a back three to match Roma man for man. We saw it a bit more in the first half of the season than we have in the second, but Brendan did wheel it out at the weekend against Tottenham, perhaps in preparation for this one. Obviously, to go man for man against Conte's formation, I wonder if he's going to do something very similar here against Mourinho. Ultimately, though, I do think that Roma will have enough. They've been really impressive in the second half of this season, and whilst Leicester have sharpened up in recent weeks, especially in Europe, I'm going to gamble that Tammy Abraham and the Giallorossi will get over the line just and be in that final in Tirana. I'm going to predict Roma 2, Leicester 1 at the Olympico. That's it from me today, gang. Thank you so much for watching. Please do share this with any and everybody that you think might enjoy learning more about the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. Make sure that you're subscribed on the Ranks FC channel by hitting that button down there, and enjoy all 4 of the semi-finals tonight. Whatever you choose to watch, I have no doubt that it's going to be an incredible amount of fun. And by 10 o'clock tonight, we will know who we have in the finals of both of these competitions in Tirana and Sevilla, respectively. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Take it easy.